Welcome back to Nick Lenz Comic Guru Classic Non-Classic. This is episode number 1511 and Doubleshot number 1405. Now, I have technically two Batman trades. I'm also discussing a couple issues of the Tet Comics, which to this day have not been put into a trade for some reason. But we'll be discussing them. Alright, first up it is Batman Harley Quinn. Yes, a trade paper to click some of Harley's early solo appearances. Well, some of her noteworthy appearances, over the past 20 years. Yeah, can you believe it's over 20 years since Harley Quinn's been in comics? Yes. Obviously, of course, like a lot of these particular type trade paperbacks, we have the very first appearance of Harley Quinn, Batman Harley Quinn number 1. Yep, includes that in here, and that's the cover for the trade here. Yep. We also have two stories from Batman Gotham Knights, issues 14 and 30. From the Detective Comics, we have issues 831, 837 of Joker's Asylum, Harley Quinn number 1, Batman Black and White. I believe this is from the original run. Issues 1 and 3. DC Legends of the Dark Knight 100 page super spectacular, one of the stories to end her Villains Month one shot. Yep. Now, of course, who writes this stuff, you might ask? Well, her Harley Quinn one shot, that basically had her debut, that's written by one of her co-creators, Paul Dini. Artwork in that book is done by Yellow Gotsit. Of course, Paul Dini does also her second story that's from this trade, Batman Gotham Knights, number 14, with artwork by Ronnie Del Carmen. Issue 30 from Batman Gotham Knights, that's written by Doug Alexander. Art by Rob Hines. And then the next two stories are definitely Paul Dini stories, kind of like a family, with the artwork by both times by Don Kramer. The cover art here is done by Simone Balanchi. The Joker's Asylum Harley Quinn one shot is done by James Patrick. He's the writer. Artwork by Joe Quinnis. The Justice of Serve story. This is actually from the second series. I thought it was from the original one because it's about black and white. They should put like the flames superhero or something like that in the back. The first story is written by Morris Wicks. Also artwork here by Joe Quinnis. Paul Dini does the second black and white story from issue 3, Role Models. Artwork by Stephanie Roddix. I believe this may be the art writer who does the current Harley Quinn book. The Dr. Quinn Diagnosis, that's done by Jim Zavakic and art by Neil George. This is, the occasional point about this story is, this is to put Harley Quinn, even though she already lost her license being a psychiatrist, her doing a therapy session with Batman. That's literally what the story is. And then you have Harley Lives, written by Matt Knott and Neil Gage. Now, the thing with the Harley Quinn one-shot, that I kind of discussed already in I believe it was the Justice League, no, not Justice League. It was Suicide Squad, I believe it was Volume 4, I think it was. No, I think it was 4. There was the trade that collected the Forever Evil tie-in because they included all the issues of Suicide Squad that tied into Forever Evil, including a couple of villains with one-shots, including one for Deadshot and Harley Quinn and nobody else. I would have thought that they would include Black Manta too, but they didn't for some reason. I have no idea why. Now, of course, so her one-shot is set during the events of No Man's Land. Yeah, as a matter of fact, she was actually one of two characters from the animated series to make their debut in the regular DC Comics regular as during the later stages of No Man's Land. The other one was Mercy Graves. Yes, she made her debut also toward the end of No Man's Land. So that's one thing Harley Quinn has in common with her. Mostly put, it just basically, the story starts with Poison Ivy, Harley Quinn's, best friend and future girlfriend. Basically just finds her in the rubble where she's already wearing her attire. She kind of explains her backstory basically in the way what they mentioned here is kind of still canon to this day, where she basically meets the Joker during events of No Man's Land. Though I don't think that this is basically pre-Flashpoint, though currently everything's canon right now. So she meets up with the Joker and uses like a new layer for him because he needs probably a place to stay. And she basically realizes she's a big fan of his. She's got a thing for him. He's like not interested in her at all. He prefers to beat the crap out of her. Yes, the Joker beats the crap out of one of the most hottest women in DC Comics. Harley Quinn. And, well, this kind of basically leads Harley Quinn to go toward Poison Ivy. In some cases, anyways. The one shot is actually really good. And Lynn Carr himself did a review for this particular one shot actually just last year. So, my only thoughts on the damn thing is that it's a really good one shot and a great introduction to her to the regular comic universe regular. Not her first print appearance per se. That actually happened in Batman Avengers, I believe it was issue 14. That was set in the timeline of the show. This is basically regular DC canon continuity. Now, in the case of the other stories in here, like in the case of the one from... One thing I don't like about this trade is they don't have credits. Yes, seriously. They have no credits. Like, so when you read this particular trade, you're wondering, like, okay, like, you can tell the artwork has changed throughout the story. Okay, so the second one's the bet. This is the... Yeah, they have the title of the story, but you don't have the writer's credit in here. This is basically from Gotham Knights 14. And of course, you have Harley drawn like she was on the animated series. Yeah, the art style in here is very reminiscent of the animated series. You could kind of say this is set through an animated series, mostly put just her in Arkham Asylum. Yeah, that's the best way to describe this story here. Let's see. I think the other one's also called Punch. I think let's see. Yeah, based on the cover of the next story, it's probably from Detective Comics. Yeah. So yeah, next few pages is from Punchline, which is basically just Harley fooling some thief. I think it's supposed to be Firefly. No, it's not Firefly. It's some guy who she thinks, of course, she's basically tricking him thinking he's Batman. The Punchline one is simply Harley Quinn is basically going to a parole meeting. And her with Scarface. It's a really good story. Yeah, Paul Dini, from what my friend Andrew Cutter basically described this run, it's a series of one-shot stories. And this is simply put basically the antithesis of Paul Dini's run. Series of one-shot stories told in Detective Comics. Doesn't have like a regular overarching story. Now, I thought this was quite strange though. Now, Detective Comics 837 has been collected once before in a Batman Arkham trade. Yeah, the Riddler, because it's focused on the Riddler in this one. Yeah, with also appearance by the Secret Six, which Harley Quinn herself was briefly part of, for like one story arc of all things. What was that? Oh yeah, it was from arc from Birds of Prey, Gail Simone's Birds of Prey. I believe it was toward the end of her run, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, it's a really good standalone story. The next one is simply put Honor Among Thieves. Now, this is another one that's collected before. The first story is from an actual Batman. I think it's called Death in the City. That one was Honor Among Thieves. This is the one also collected in the, well, Riddler one shot. This is just, well, I believe it is. Actually, no, might have been hers, yes. This may be from the Harley Quinn, well, Joker's Asylum story. Just her basically reenacting various different things. Like, we also have Carmine Falcone. Even though at this point in comic history he was dead. Yeah, he died. He got killed by Two-Face. And then his body was frozen. Yeah, it's just a weird, odd issue that one was. Yeah, the next two stories are from Bat Black and White. Which, of course, the story is published in color. Actually, no, that's not it. Let's see. I think this one... This may have been... Yeah, I think this is Justice is Served. The art style is actually really good. This is Joe Quinnis. Really good artist, this guy is. Yeah, just a really good standalone story. And then you have an actual black and white story featuring Harley Quinn, with her just going up against Batman for a story. Yeah, then we have the story from the 100-page one-shot, which is a really fun story. And then we have the Harley Quinn one-shot. Yep. Like, if you're a Harley Quinn fan, I do recommend checking this out. This book's actually pretty fun. I give this book roughly a 9 out of 10. It's actually pretty good. Alright, now before I continue with next trade, there's a couple issues I want to discuss. It's a two-parter from Detective Comics, which, to this day, despite the fact this story came out roughly 14 years ago, it was actually, 14 years ago. This is from the Detective Comics issues 835 to 836. Now, you probably would think, based on the cover, it would have been the trade paperback published at the time, but it wasn't. You want to know why? Because Paul Dini didn't write it. Because DC had, from what I can tell, DC was a policy where if the regular writer of the series wasn't writing these issues, don't put in the trade. Which I think it's kind of dumb. You could put maybe just after those stories. You could have done that. Nope. They just don't freaking care. Absolute Terror, the artwork in here is done by Tom Mandrake. And this mostly put a two-part focus on the Scarecrow. You're probably thinking, a two-part focus on the Scarecrow? Did DC put this in the Batman Arkham Scarecrow trade? The answer is no. They did not. Yep. This is basically what you think of when you think of a Scarecrow story. Basically, a Scarecrow doing something like a mini Reign of Terror, about 2 issues. We have Tom Mandrake doing the artwork, like I said, with basically guest appearances by Great White Shark. Yeah, but he's not the only one that pops up in here, aside from, of course, the Scarecrow. I believe it's supposed to be Sasha. Yeah, Sasha Bentrix, who actually was his girlfriend, who actually was his bodyguard, that later girlfriend. Yeah, the thing with him and Sasha, they never could do a formal relation between the two of them because she was his bodyguard. Okay, the story is done by John Rosum. Yes. Yeah. I should just basically, the thing with this two-parter is that just a fun story arc featuring a Scarecrow as the main villain. Yeah. And of course, while dealing with the Scarecrow, it's a very self-contained story, and I'm surprised this particular story has never been to trade paperback. Is it a bad story? No. No, it isn't. It's actually pretty good. It's stuff you would expect from basically Batman at this point in time. Also, Tim Drake is wearing his 1 year later costume at this point. Let's see if I can find a good picture of it. Yeah, you're probably thinking, okay, the reason why he's wearing 1 year later because this came not long after the events of Face to Face. Yep. After they defeat the Scarecrow, they think he fell into some place, but he's not dead. Nope, he survives. He basically just goes to the hospital, and he's not standing here for a little while. It's a pretty good story arc, per se, and I'm so surprised to this day. I wasn't reading this when this came out, so I just read it recently, man, this is a really good story arc. Why was this in trade? Oh, because DC probably had that policy. Like I said, if the regular writer didn't write the story, don't put in the trade. Yeah, I've noticed this with a lot of trades, basically, where they're basically missing issues for, no reason. Now, normally, if Marvel is missing an issue, it's because of legal reason. They can't put the issue in the trade because there's a character who appears in the book who Marvel doesn't legally own. if there's any comic featuring, let's say, Rom or the Micronauts, can't put in the trade paperback because Marvel doesn't own the publication rights to it. It's kind of the same thing with Transformers number 3, the Marvel version, where IDW can't collect it in trade, mainly because the fact that it features Spider-Man as a guest star. Yep. I would have thought that they would have put that issue in the New Avengers Transformers trade. That would have been... Okay. Well, looks like I have to be continued later. Okay? See you next video. For part 2. Bye.